If you were living in Germany during the Cold War, chances are you might have got around on one of these. In fact, the brand Simson is reported to have been the most productive moped producer in Germany, with almost 6 million units sold, and many of them still kicking about today. But perhaps the most interesting thing about these mopeds is how fast you can drive them. See, while most mopeds in Germany today are limited to 45 km per hour, in the German Democratic Republic, or GDR, mopeds up to 50cc were actually allowed to go 60 km per hour. And so when Germany reunified in 1990, lawmakers made a remarkable decision. Any moped from former East Germany that was put into circulation before February 28th of 1992 would be allowed to retain that higher speed limit. And so what this basically means is that even today, a Simson is still legally allowed to travel at 60 km per hour, whilst any modern 50cc bike is capped at 45. But what if I told you that a Simson is now also the fastest electric moped that you can legally ride in Germany? Second Ride is a spin-out from the Technical University of Berlin, who have developed a conversion kit for these mopeds. These kits enable the bikes to run on pure battery power, whilst maintaining the retro looks of the original machines. While they started with Simsons, selling their first 30 kits in just 2 hours, they recently released a product called the Mid 50. Unlike the Simson specific kits, the Mid 50 is designed to be universal, fitting all kinds of mopeds that share a centrally mounted 50cc combustion engine layout. In my view, the description conversion kit doesn't really do it justice. As mentioned, this project originated out of TU Berlin, and the technology used on it is pretty groundbreaking. Both the battery and the motor were developed in-house and offer a level of repairability and customizability the industry hasn't really seen much of before.
I'm Marlon, I'm the lead engineer of Second Ride.
I spoke to their head of research and development, Marlon, to find more about what makes their product special and how they're already shaking up the industry. I'm Luke, and you're watching The Upshift. Now, the first thing I want to focus on is the battery. The Second Ride battery is unique in that it's produced very differently to conventional vehicle batteries. Most e-bike and light vehicle batteries are made up of small cylindrical cells, and these are connected in a circuit through a technique known as spot welding. As the name suggests, spot welding uses high electric currents to fuse strips of usually nickel to the cell terminals. Now, the reason that spot welding is so ubiquitous is that it offers a really reliable yet really low resistance connection. But the other side of this is that once the cells have been welded in place, they're also really hard to remove. And this clearly has implications for the ability to replace cells, for example, if they've degraded over time, and being able to remove the cells for recycling. Now, Second Ride have developed what they call a one-sided cell contacting system. What this essentially boils down to is actually very similar to the idea used by Infinite Battery, who I featured in a previous video. Instead of welding, Second Ride uses a custom-designed PCB with integrated spring arms that apply constant pressure to the cell terminals as it sandwiches the cells. It works much more like the batteries in your TV remote than a traditional EV pack. And what this means is that should a user want to replace their battery cells, they can simply unscrew the lid, remove the contacting plate, and swap out the cells. In terms of cost, this is a game changer. Replacing the cells might cost you between 200 and 300 euros, whereas a completely new battery pack would set you back 1,000. But this idea has been a source of some controversy. About a month ago, the EU ruled against a line in the EU battery regulation mandating battery manufacturers to enable the replacement of individual cells within the battery. It was the result of heavy industry lobbying, mostly driven by concerns around safety and economics. But Second Ride believe that repair like this can be done in a safe and controlled manner. It's just a question of design.
Repair should be available for everyone. And there are some critics that say that by making batteries repairable, you put the consumer into danger. And we don't agree with that. We just need to engineer the products around repairability, and by that also engineering safety of repair into the battery packs. And that is absolutely possible. We're showing this. When you remove the top lid of the battery pack, there's no high voltage at all. It's just cell voltages.
At this point, Second Ride doesn't see the customers actually doing the repair of the battery themselves, but this is something they'd like to integrate into future products.
So right now we don't recommend our customers to do it, just because we are now experiencing it the first time in customers' hands, and we also need to learn all the long-term risks associated with that. There will be partners of us who will be repairing the battery packs for a cheap service price. Repairability not only benefits people by getting them to repair their own battery packs, but also making the repair in general cheaper and faster, and by that also already benefiting the customers. But we are working on making the battery pack fully repairable by the customer in a collaboration with the TU Berlin.
Second Ride have now actually spun out this battery technology into a sub-brand called Marquee Batteries. Now, my last video about repairable batteries coincided with a lot of hype around solid-state batteries, and a lot of people were quick to bring this up in the comments. I asked Marlon whether he felt solid-state batteries would sort of make these repairable designs obsolete, or whether it was still worth pursuing this.
Solid-state batteries, in my opinion, are the future of batteries for various of reasons, but I don't think that they generally solve the problem of repairability or safety of repair. We think that that should be done by other measures, like, for example, how the battery cell is packaged in the battery pack and what kind of mechanisms there are to protect the battery, and all the circuitry that you have inside of the battery pack from coarse customer handling.
Now, the second really cool part of this project is the degree to which Second Ride have open sourced their mid-50 kit. The company says the reasoning behind this is that they want to enable this garage culture for the digital age of electric vehicles. On top of this, it's also enabling the company to grow beyond their internal resources, as their customers are now able to develop additional accessories and stuff for their products. Second Ride provide free access for anything from 3D data for the outer shell, full wiring diagrams, and even the CAN bus interface, or in simple terms, the communication protocol of their electrical components. The company now has a Discord community of over 1,000 people who share features and extensions, and users can also push their own extensions or documentation directly to the company's online GitHub repositories. Open sourcing is something that seems to be quite common in this circular economy startup space. I recently did a video on another Berlin-based startup, OpenFunk, whose Remix blender was built on a similar philosophy. But one important nuance of this is that you have to tread a very fine line between what you release and what you don't. For example, you don't want to release any IP that could be used by a competitor to copy your product.
We uploaded the 3D data of our conversion kit, and so you can download it and develop your own adapters for it. But you cannot look inside the 3D data, so there's no internal aspects of the 3D data. Or we also upload our wiring diagram. So the connections that the kit has, but we are not uploading the internal circuitry of our electronics, for example. And
so I realize at this point, I haven't actually spoken about how Second Ride's business model actually works. Basically, you as the customer have three options. The first is where Second Ride does everything for you. They source the bike, restore it, and you get a ready-to-ride moped. Your other options to source the bike yourself, but where Second Ride or a partner still perform the conversion. And the last option is to do it all yourself, which Marlon says doesn't actually require that much technical knowledge and can be completed in a couple of hours. As for how much this would cost, the first option would set you back 6,000 to 7,000 euros in total, whereas the base kit on its own starts at $2,700. It was also interesting to hear about how it works to legally register a bike once it's been converted. And one thing that's funny about registering an old vehicle like this is that the original rules from the time of its manufacture still apply.
to register a converted vehicle, one thing must be taken into account, and that is the registration rules of original registration date. So for our S51 as a converted vehicle, for example, this is the date of 1980, for example. So, and then these rules, they still apply to the vehicle when you convert them, when you upgrade them, when you tune them. And this is the case with our conversion kit. By that you get from us so-called Teilegutachten in Germany, and that is the certification approval. With that you go to the certification authority and they check that you installed the things correctly, and also check that you limit it with our configuration interface the vehicle to the given parameters in your vehicle registration sheet. So for example, with the Simson S51, they can drive 60 kilometers per hour and have 4 kilowatt maximum power. You insert that and they check it, and with that you can go to get your vehicle papers with electric drive.
Marlon mentioned the configuration interface here, and what he's referring to is an app that Second Ride have developed, providing users with several features. These include, for example, using the app to configure the drive unit, maybe to increase power for off-road use, or to check the battery state of charge and facilitate over-the-air updates. Because of the system's open source nature, which we mentioned, users can also use the app to implement their own code to create unique functions like a sound generator, for instance. I think that overall, Second Ride are doing some really important stuff, especially in the ride to repair space. But there's one thing I believe Second Ride has done that very few people in the micromobility industry have been able to achieve. And that's finding a way to rebuild this sense of connection to the product that electric vehicles are struggling to achieve. Think of all these people in the past who would tinker away in their garages, modifying, repairing and maintaining traditional motor vehicles. You don't really see that anymore. Electric systems, for a start, are much harder to understand and, well, access. And there's also this issue that after a couple of years, the technology has improved so much that the product is obsolete. At least in the case of Second Ride, if you can remove the battery, the cells, and also have an open communication interface, upgrading cells or even the entire battery pack becomes genuinely feasible. So yes, these bikes aren't cheap. And yes, not everyone is going to ride around on a classic moped, converted or not. Second Ride doesn't solve all the problems in sustainable mobility, but they are inspiring us to rethink the way we design products. Not just the quality and performance they offer, but also the relationship the user develops with that product. And that is really powerful. If you like this video, be sure to check out some of my others, like this one about Infinite Battery, another company doing bold things in the micromobility space. As always, I'm Luke, and this was The Upshift.